I'm Kelly. This is Danielle. We're from the GRO agency. We're going to talk to you today about connecting your product with consumers through branding and packaging design. And the GRO agency is a brand strategy and packaging design agency. Again, we focus on food and beverage. We are located in New York and Los Angeles, and we've been around for a little over 30 years. And my name is Kelly Criswell. I'm the Chief Creative Officer. My secret vice is candy corn. So if any of you guys know anyone or have a brand that is a non-GMO, organic, calorie-free candy corn, hit me up after this. And Danielle is our VP of Strategy. And her secret vice is coming up with great brand names and buying the URLs. So if you can't find your URL, you should hit her up after this. So we're going to start with strategy, and I'll let Danielle take over this part.
Thanks, Kelly. Hi, guys. So you heard Nat talk a little bit about differentiation and packaging and that kind of stuff. And so we're going to talk to you about what a brand is, how to create a brand, and how to translate that into the visual language that becomes your package. So the intersection of what your product does and says with how your product makes people feel is your brand. The purpose of that brand is to connect your product to consumer needs and emotions in a really competitive market, right? So essentially, the point of your brand is to evoke a feeling in your target consumer. Building a brand is a process. You have to make a lot of choices. It's really important to know who you're targeting. One thing that a lot of people don't realize is that good design, particularly those of you who are starting out and you're going to go to like a freelance graphic designer to help you, people don't realize that good design doesn't always equal strategic packaging design. And what I mean by that is as you go through the process of building your brand, you're going to identify the most important attributes of your product, the most important things that are going to connect with your consumer. And if you haven't done that and you hand your product off to a designer to create your design just based on what you like aesthetically, it's not going to be targeted packaging design. It's not going to hit your target consumer in the same way, right? So good design does not equal strategic packaging design. And it's important that you have a brand strategy in place to inform that visual language, because that's what makes that visual language super, super effective. The value of doing the branding is really in distilling your message and focusing your personality so it's very connective with your target, and understanding exactly what you want to elevate through your brand, what message you want to communicate. So we like to think of branding as a conversation, and it's a good guideline. If you're chatting to someone at a party, you do not want to be boring. They won't be interested, right? And you also can't, if you're speaking a different language, if they don't understand the language you're speaking, they're not going to pay attention. So if the consumer doesn't understand what your product does, they're going to overlook it. And the last thing is the most interesting person that you chat to at a party is someone that you can relate to. It's another personality that you find relatable. It's the same with branding, right? So it's human nature to gravitate towards things that you like and things that are like you and things that speak your quote-unquote language, right? So you want to decide who that target consumer is so that you can create messaging and a visual language that appeals to that target. So what do these three products have in common? They're very, very different product offerings, and they target a very different consumer, but they do have a through line. So let's talk about what that is. So these three brands, while very different, have done a really good job of distilling a super resonant personality, and they're having an extremely interesting conversation with their consumers. And by the way, you guys will have access to this deck, so as I take you through all of it, you'll be able to reference it later to sort of guide your own process. So Rebel is all about the righteous plant alchemy, and they're really targeting a wellness seeker, someone who's interested in enlightenment, right? Death Wish Coffee is the world's strongest coffee. They're very rebellious. They're very sarcastic. If you don't follow them on Instagram, they're really, really funny. And Boom Chicka Pop is a snack that feels good. So Boom Chicka Pop is a great example of positioning. It's very difficult to make popcorn different or stand out. So what Boom Chicka Pop, and they didn't start out with this position, they started out very different, but what they ended up doing was becoming the feel-good popcorn, right? Which is really resonant, and they're blowing up. So to distill is a really, really challenging but essential process. You have to extract the essential meaning or most important aspects of your offering, of your brand. You absolutely have to. And what comes with that is making some really difficult decisions because, as I'm sure a lot of you guys feel, you have great products that could do a lot of things for a lot of people, but everyone is not an effective target market. It really isn't. So you have to make tricky choices and really bubble up the things that are going to be most connective to the target market. So this is a little bit about how we do it. And can serve as a guideline for you to sort of do your own process. So the first thing we do is we uncover all of the attributes of your product, everything that it could possibly do for the consumer, right? And we really prioritize that, and that is essential because there are some things that you're going to want to say on front of pack. There are some things that you're going to want to infuse into your brand's visual language and sort of connect intuitively. And then there are some things that can go on the back of the package. There are some things you're going to have to leave off altogether, right? So you got to identify what everything is and prioritize them in terms of what resonates with your target. The next thing we do is we build a brand promise. Your brand has to promise the consumer something. You're dealing with some really savvy consumers, and in today's market, people really want to buy products that resonate with their values. So you have to know what you stand for and what you're up to in the world, which doesn't mean you have to have a social mission. It just means there have to be some authentic values behind your brand. So we create a succinct statement that highlights those values so you can return to them, really across all of your business practices. This is something that you and your team can ongoingly align to. And then we create a brand personality. When we're doing this, we look at everything, right? We look at the founder's story, we look at the history of your ingredients, we look at the process by which you make your product. We take everything into account, and we start to really distinguish the most connective nuggets, the connective tissue of your brand, the most interesting and compelling things. And we assign your brand some human attributes, and we do a lot of work with Jungian archetypes, which are universal and known to really intuitively connect people to things. And we talk about how does the product sound. So we give the product a brand voice, right? We talk about what does it look like, what's it like, what does it remind you of. Yeah, did I get it all? Cool. Okay. So the point of this whole process, ultimately, if you do it well, is to get to the insight. You have to really be able to digest this and sort of embody it in the messaging and the design around your brand. So you want to get to the message. And what it is it's one super succinct statement that really encompasses all of these layers and can very, very quickly communicate what your unique position is, what your unique brand proposition is, your unique personality and value. So we do this process, and then we partner with the design team, and the design team translates that into the visual language that then becomes your packaging design. So with that, I'm turning it over to Kelly to talk to you about the design part of this.
Thank you. So this is the other part of what we do. It's packaging design. Consumers make buying decisions in 7 seconds or less. So that means your packaging has to work really hard to influence that decision. So we look at the buying environment and where that overlaps with the brand strategy, and we consider that packaging strategy. So I'm going to take you through a little bit of what that means. And first, we're just going to talk about how great packaging can make connections with your consumer, some kind of top-line stuff. These are what I think are the 5 great elements of packaging design. The first thing is that it should visually communicate the brand positioning, so that the insight that you've uncovered from your strategy, that should be the first thing that it communicates. It should immediately and intuitively differentiate your brand. So what's different? Why should I buy it? Why should consumers care? It should communicate taste appeal and or functional benefits. Should create an emotional connection with the target consumer, which we've been talking about a lot. And if you do all of those things really well, it will guide consumer purchase decision quickly. So what does that mean? I'm going to show you some examples of great strategic packaging in action and kind of break down some of those strategies that were used. So here's the first example. This is Pacific Gold Reserve. This is a really premium craft flavor-forward product. They came to us with a package that was not working for them. It was doing a lot. They were trying to do, they've got that saying, you can't do everything well, or, So they were trying to do everything, and they were doing it all kind of mediocre. I said it was a flavor-forward package, and they're using really highly illustrated flavor cues, which seem fake. And it's a really premium product and a higher price point, and they're using kind of a pedestrian, juvenile logo. They're also targeting both men and women, so there's a lot of conflicting things happening on their packaging. So what we did is we really went in there and focused on what we think is the message and the personality, which is premium craft jerky and the personality of a passionate authenticity. In order to do that, we really upscaled the logo. We really turned the typography into more of a craft typography, more small batch. We used photography instead of illustration, and totally changed the kind of color and feeling tone to target men, who's the earliest adopter of this product. And in order to do that, the process that I use, I call it the okayest theory. All of you guys have products that do a lot of things, right? You have a lot of claims you could make. You have a lot of things that you do, this product included. And you have to really look at what's my brand mission, who am I targeting, what are my values, and pick out the things to really, really focus on, right? And all the other things, you're the okayest at. So I call it the okayest theory because it's not difficult to figure out what you want to do well, right? Look at your brand mission. What do you really, really want to scream? The difficulty is making those really hard decisions. What am I going to let go of? What am I going to leave to the back of the pack? Or what am I going to leave to in this case, the bottom of the pack? All those natural claims are still there, but they're really quiet so that we can really get a focused package. And they were able to launch 2 sublines within that first year, very successful line. And, I got to show you the Instagram feed because I think that it's really important to use this theory to focus your graphic packaging so that you can really stand out on Instagram. We all know that's super important to be Instagrammable. Their engagements went up 660% that year when they did the redesign. Here's another example. Schulstad is a heritage brand. They've been around a long time. It's a European bread bakery brand. And they wanted to launch a take and bake bread in the US, and they wanted to launch it in the bakery section of traditional retail, grocery. And so we focused their package on the union of artisan craft and modern expertise, and the personality is kind of a quirky traditionalist. And we achieved that by using this old illustration of the founder and kind of interplaying that with some quirky design elements, some really breakthrough typography to kind of give it that modern yet heritage feeling. And the way we came to that was by taking a look at the environment. I mentioned that before. Look at the buying environment and see how you can stand out. The bakery section of grocery is brown paper bags, super subtle branding, very, very quiet. And so in order to stand out and really break through in that space, we did something very disruptive. Here's a beverage example, Solum Agua Fresca. Solum is a great brand. They're out of Mexico. They wanted to launch an Agua Fresca in the US, but they didn't want to be perceived as like that sugar water kind of fruit drink thing. They really wanted to be like a modern wellness brand. They've got functional benefits. So in order to achieve that, we created a brand story and a brand personality to really leverage this, this look. So we came up with a story about this Aztec water god who's the god of earthly fertility and wellness. And we hinged the personality all around this god. So it's still about authentic hydration and functional benefits, but the jubilant, soulful creator is this personality. And I wanted to point this one out especially because fiber and probiotics are still a big differentiator of this brand. We've got it really big on the side. But in order to get the shopper to pick this package up and say, what is this thing? We really hinged the main element of this package around the personality. So really you want the shopper to say, what is this? This is different. Pick it up, look at the back, read the beautiful story, read the great claims that you have, because you can't say that all on the front. So you really have to make some noise to get the shopper to pick it up. And here's all the flavors. And here's another example in Beverage. It's Simple Life. This is a CBD-infused line of teas and waters. So it's a brand that's really about simplifying modern life. It's about achieving a sense of wellness and balance. And their old packaging, it's medicinal, it's informational, it's very serious. It doesn't really speak to anything in particular. And so we created this, this feeling tone, really. It's all about good vibes for the modern day. It's about this feeling of peaceful seeker. You should get a feeling of respite and balance and calm and ease from this visual language that we created. And I think it's important that you use a really clear hierarchy. You want to be able to tell the difference between flavors, and you want to really guide the shopper through the communication on the front of the pack in a certain order, and you want them to understand what's the difference between this product and this product. So it's really about communicating that in a very clean and simple way. And I'm gonna talk about Annie's a little bit. So Annie's, I love, love, love this brand. We buy it every week. It's a great brand. It's a strong brand. It's a great example of what I consider a strong brand with kind of muddled packaging execution, right? And we put the Little Orphan Annie logo on here because we have a joke around the office about how we think that they borrowed some equities there and kind of built a really strong brand around that. So what I mean by muddled packaging execution is, this basically, it doesn't express the core brand message consistently across packages. It's an example of maybe a brand getting diluted as they continue to launch more SKUs. So there's no real strong ownability on shelf. I could look at this very quickly and think it's a lot of different brands. They don't have strong brand blocking or strong color blocking. And I'm not saying you shouldn't change the color of your package from SKU to SKU. You totally can, as long as there's a strong, consistent visual element to carry you through and bring the brand together. There's also no great system for shoppability. I mean, good luck finding the gluten-free SKU in this, right? So we don't usually do this, but a couple days before we came out here, we said, all right, let's try this. Let's put together what we would do for Annie's. So if you're here from Annie's, you did not miss a memo. We totally just did this for fun and as a visual example of what we've been talking about this whole time, right? So here's what we would do for Annie's. We would focus on the message and the personality of the brand, right? So made with goodness is what I think is the message of this brand. When I think of Annie's, I think everything inside of it is made with goodness. And the quirky caregiver. So, we really cleaned up the package and took all of the information that's everywhere and put it in this maybe like hand-done label. Maybe Mama Annie slapped it on there herself, But the idea is to really kind of clean up the clutter, get straight to the point. What is this thing? And of course, we couldn't resist saying, okay, all right, so on one flavor, what does it look like across the different lines? What does vegan look like? What does grass-fed look like? What does gluten-free look like? Because we do think it's really important to help the shopper navigate that shelf set and see, which one they want to buy. And another really important thing for big brands to understand when they're redesigning is don't confuse the shopper, stick with the same colors that you're used to sticking with, and don't alienate your loyal consumer. I know if I came home, I buy that purple box, 2 of them a week for my kids, and if I came home with that purple box and I had a different flavor inside, it would be mutiny. So, it's very important to keep those loyal fans engaged. And, just an example of how we would go about that. All of this was really how we go about this process. So can't wait to answer questions and help you guys figure out your process. And I think that's it. I hope we left time for questions.
Yep, we do. We have about 10 minutes actually for questions, so plenty of time. Anybody have any questions for Kelly or Danielle? Anybody, any questions?
We
I have a
answered
question,
everything
actually,
already.
just following up on something that Nat said, talking about sort of trying out stuff and iterating sort of as you go. Is that something that applies also for package design? Can you sort of go with something that's okay and incrementally make changes, or is that not a good strategy?
Yeah, listen, everybody has a different strategy, but for smaller brands, it's definitely a lot more possible than like for Annie's, right? So yes, and get feedback, right? do something, get feedback. If you're on e-com, you can get feedback really easily from or via social media, right? So get feedback and iterate. Maybe you have something to add.
No, I agree. I mean, it can be costly. There can be pitfalls. You have to be aware of that. I think it's really important to be strategic when you're developing the visual language for your packaging, even if that just means you sitting down with a pen and pad and sort of figuring out exactly what you want to focus on. But I think all good, I joke that a brand isn't something you establish and then just let sit there to age. You have to constantly be looking at it and iterating, and we do the same.
Hi. A bit related to what you just said, I was wondering, in your view, what's the best moment for a startup to come to you and ask for advice? Because usually startups don't necessarily have the means to pay for these kind of services. So how does it usually work, and what would you recommend?
That's a great question, and I will first say that we are here, and you can come ask us for advice for free because we are here. But I'll let Danielle elaborate.
Yeah, so there is no usual way. So sometimes we do engage with startups. Sometimes it is just totally out of the question to engage with an agency like ours. But I do think that as early as you have a product, you should start thinking about your brand strategy. And one of the reasons that we come and speak at this kind of event is so that we can connect with all of you guys and support you and provide you with advice and feedback. And in addition, and it's a little early to announce this, but we are always looking at that issue, and we're trying to develop some products that will support you guys in finding resources that are more available, more affordable, and help walk you through the process of your own brand strategy. But we're here, we're available, we're handing out cards, contact us anytime. We're big on relationship building and staying in touch. We learn from you as you learn from us.
In the back, I'll be right there.
So I have a water that usually the feedback that I get from my packaging is that it's very similar to Fiji, which is this one. What do you do in that case? Do you start from scratch, or do you just tweak a little thing, so you just try to convince the customers that no, I'm not that brand that you're actually telling me that I am. I'm totally different. So in that case, what would you do?
That's a great question. Well, you do want to differentiate, obviously. And my answer would really depend on where you are in your business, right? How far along you are. But yes, the answer is you definitely want to differentiate. That might mean a whole overhaul. That might mean tweaking some key elements, right, that differentiate you enough visually. It really kind of depends on where you are, but happy to talk more to you about that.
And have a brand strategy.
Amen.
Before you make those choices.
Another question back here.
Yeah, one more question. Can you guys give us an estimate effect of the packaging change on the sales, a good case or bad case, or a recent brand that changed the packaging, the sales goes up this much or down, etc.? Do you have any numbers, range, etc.? I have a couple of numbers in my mind, but I just want to double
There's
check
always
with you.
someone with this question.
I know.
Yeah,
We
and
can't get
also-
away from this question. So we actually Sorry.
So I know a couple of cases they won an award in terms of design, but the sales was terrible. So how you explain this conundrum?
Yeah, so we don't have a perfect answer for this. We do have numbers from Pacific Gold on our deck. I don't remember what it is, but they did see an increase, like 25% or something, in revenue post redesign. So one of the reasons why it's really hard to directly connect ROI to strategy, branding, and packaging design, although you can do it, and we do ask our clients to track that for us, is that if you're doing a real brand strategy, if you're being really strategic about it, that work is being infused throughout whatever else you're doing, right? So it's being infused into your marketing messaging and into your packaging design and into your overall strategy. But when you redesign, typically there's going to be some kind of marketing effort along with it, and it's hard to identify what drove what. But because that brand strategy is so foundational to all of it, that we could say that it is all affected by whatever overall increase of revenue it drove or is being driven.
Okay, we have time for another question or two. Sir?
What's the general timeline to go through that process for someone that's already got a brand in a package?
That's a really good question.
Yeah, again, it really does depend. You know, we've done complete brand new brands in 2-3 months. That's generally a good feel. It depends on how many SKUs, it depends on how many lines, but I'd say just as a general idea, 2-3 months.
All right, great. Thank you so much, Kelly and Danielle.
Thank you.